The sound of a single gunshot echoed through the dusty streets of Promise Creek, Montana, as Sophia King clutched her mother's rosary tighter and squeezed her eyes shut in desperate prayer. It was 1879, and at 24 years of age, she had already seen more heartache than most endure in a lifetime. The spring sun beat down mercilessly on her black mourning dress as she knelt in the dirt outside the weathered church, its white paint peeling like the layers of her former life. 3 weeks a widow, Sophia found herself alone in a frontier town that had swallowed her dreams along with her husband's last breath. Thomas King had been a kind man, a shopkeeper with gentle hands and ambitious plans, until pneumonia took him in the harsh winter, leaving her with nothing but debts and a small room above what used to be their general store. "Lord, give me strength," she whispered, her voice cracking as her knees pressed into the hard, packed earth. "Show me a path forward." The tears she had been fighting all morning finally broke free, streaming down her dust-coated cheeks. Exhaustion overwhelmed her, and she felt herself sway, the world tilting sideways as her body, weakened from days of poor sleep and little food, finally surrendered to gravity. But instead of meeting the unforgiving ground, strong arms caught her. Through her tear-blurred vision, she glimpsed a weathered face beneath the brim of a Stetson hat, concern etched in lines that spoke of years under the open sky. "Easy there, madam," came a deep voice, steady as a mountain stream. "I've got you." Sophia's vision cleared enough to see her rescuer, properly a tall man with shoulders broad as an oak and eyes the color of a summer sky. His face was sun-bronzed and stubbled, but it was the kindness in his gaze that caught her attention. "I'm sorry," she managed, attempting to right herself, embarrassment flooding her cheeks with color. "I didn't mean to. No need for apologies," he said, helping her to her feet with remarkable gentleness for hands so clearly accustomed to hard work. "Name's Clayton Blackburn." "Most folks call me Clay." "Sophia King," she replied, smoothing her skirts with trembling hands. "Thank you for your assistance, Mr. Blackburn." Clay studied her face, noting the dark circles beneath her eyes and the grief that hung about her like a shroud. "You're Thomas King's widow," he stated simply, not a question but a recognition. She nodded, her throat too tight for words. "I'm mighty sorry for your loss, Mrs. King. Your husband was a fair man." He glanced at the church and then back to her. "Seems to me you could use a moment's rest and perhaps something to eat. May I escort you to the cafe?" Sophia hesitated, propriety warring with the gnawing emptiness in her stomach. A widow accepting the company of a strange man would set tongues wagging in a town like Promise Creek. But there was something trustworthy in Clayton Blackburn's steady gaze. "I shouldn't impose," she began. "It's no imposition," he countered gently. "And I make you this promise, Mrs. King, I'll see you find some peace in this rough place. No one should face the world alone." Those words, so simply spoken but filled with sincerity, broke something loose inside her. Fresh tears threatened, but she blinked them away and nodded. "Then I accept your kindness, Mr. Blackburn." As they walked side by side down the dusty main street, Sophia became acutely aware of curious glances from townsfolk. Clay seemed oblivious, his stride confident and unhurried. "You're not from Promise Creek," she observed, trying to place his face among the town's regular inhabitants. "No, madam. I work the Double R Ranch about 15 miles north, come into town for supplies and to deliver messages now and then." He adjusted his hat against the sun. "Been there going on 3 years now." The cafe was a modest establishment with checked curtains in the windows and the aroma of fresh bread wafting from within. Clay held the door for her, and Sophia entered, feeling strangely like she was crossing some invisible threshold in her life. Martha Peterson, the cafe owner, greeted them with raised eyebrows but a warm smile. "Mrs. King, good to see you out and about, and Mr. Blackburn, been a spell since you graced us with your presence." Clay nodded politely. "Mrs. Peterson, table for 2 if you please." They were seated near a window, the spring light filtering through the glass and casting patterns on the wooden table between them. Sophia removed her gloves slowly, aware of the absence of her wedding band, which she had sold the previous week to pay for essentials. "You must think me terribly weak," she said quietly after they had ordered. "Collapsing in the street like some fragile flower." Clay shook his head. "I think you're stronger than most, Mrs. King. Grief takes a toll that few understand unless they've walked that road themselves." There was something in his voice that made her look up sharply. "You speak from experience." He nodded, his fingers tracing an invisible pattern on the tablecloth. "Lost my wife and daughter to typhoid 6 years ago. Emma was 22. Our little girl, Sarah, just turned 3. His voice remained steady, but pain shadowed his eyes. Thought the world had ended, maybe it did in a way. Sophia's heart constricted at his words. "I'm so sorry." "As am I for your loss," he replied. "It gets, not easier exactly, different. You find a way to carry it." Their food arrived, hearty stew and fresh bread, and Sophia realized how truly hungry she was. They ate in companionable silence for a few moments before she spoke again. "What brought you to Montana Territory?" she asked. "After I lost them, couldn't stand to be in Kansas anymore." "Every corner held a memory." Clay broke a piece of bread. "Drifted north, worked ranches in Colorado, Wyoming, landed at the Double R when my horse came up lame outside Promise Creek. Ranch foreman offered me work, and I've been there since." "And you?" he asked after a moment. "What brought you and your husband out here?" "Thomas had dreams of building something," Sophia replied, the memory bittersweet. "We came from Pennsylvania 2 years ago. He believed the West offered opportunities a man couldn't find back east. We poured everything into that store." She glanced out the window toward the shop that had once been her future. "Now Mr. Jenkins from the bank says it'll be sold to cover the debts." "What will you do?" Clay's question was direct but gentle. Sophia stared into her half-empty bowl. "I don't know. I have an aunt in Chicago who might take me in, but the train fare." She trailed off, unwilling to admit the full extent of her financial straits. Clay seemed to understand without her saying more. "Promise Creek could use a good schoolteacher. I hear Mrs. Wilcott is retiring come summer." "I've never taught before," Sophia said, though the idea kindled a small spark of interest. "I did have some education back east. More than most around here, I'd wager." Clay finished his stew and sat back. "Might be worth asking about." When they finished the meal, Clay insisted on paying, waving away her protests. Outside, the afternoon had mellowed, the harsh sun softened by passing clouds. "Thank you for the meal and the company, Mr. Blackburn," Sophia said, feeling oddly reluctant to part ways. "You've been very kind." "Clay," he corrected gently. "And the pleasure was mine, Mrs. King." "Sophia," she returned, surprising herself. He smiled then, a genuine expression that transformed his weathered features and reached his eyes. "Sophia," he repeated, as if testing the sound of it. "I'll be in town for another day or so. Perhaps I could call on you tomorrow. There's a matter I'd like to discuss." Curiosity piqued, she nodded. "I'm staying at Mrs. Holloway's boarding house, the room at the end of the hall upstairs." As she watched him tip his hat and stride away, Sophia felt something stir within her, not happiness, exactly, but perhaps the faintest whisper of possibility. The following morning, Sophia woke with the sun, feeling more rested than she had in weeks. She dressed carefully in her second-best dress, the navy blue one with small white flowers that Thomas had always admired. The thought of her husband brought the familiar ache, but today it was accompanied by a strange guilt. Was it wrong to find comfort in another's company so soon? Mrs. Holloway provided a simple breakfast of porridge and coffee, eyeing Sophia with poorly concealed curiosity. "That cowboy seemed quite taken with you yesterday," she commented, pouring more coffee into Sophia's cup. "Mr. Blackburn was simply being kind," Sophia replied, keeping her tone neutral despite the warmth that crept up her neck. "He's calling today to discuss a matter of business." Mrs. Holloway hummed, clearly unconvinced. "Well, he's a respectable sort, from what I hear. Keeps to himself mostly, does his job well. Never causes trouble in town like some of those ranch hands." A knock at the front door interrupted further discussion. Mrs. Holloway hurried to answer it, and moments later, Clay entered the small dining room, hat in hand. He had shaved, Sophia noticed, and wore a clean shirt under his leather vest. "Good morning, Mrs. Holloway, Mrs. King," he greeted them both with a nod. "Mr. Blackburn," Sophia returned, suddenly self-conscious under Mrs. Holloway's watchful gaze. "I was hoping you might accompany me on a short walk," Clay said. "It's a fine morning for it." With Mrs. Holloway's blessing, which came with a knowing smile that made Sophia's cheeks flush, they set out into the bright spring morning. Promise Creek was coming alive, storekeepers sweeping porches, a wagon loaded with lumber creaking past. "You said there was a matter you wished to discuss," Sophia prompted after they had walked a block in comfortable silence. Clay nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I spoke with Sheriff Daniels last night. He mentioned the bank's planning to sell your store." "Yes, next week, I believe. Thing is," Clay continued, "the double Articus looking to establish a trading post closer to town. The owner, Mr. Richardson, has been talking about it for months. Your store would be well situated for that purpose." Sophia stopped walking, turning to face him fully. "What are you suggesting, Mr. Blackburn?" "Clay," he reminded her gently, "and I'm suggesting a proposition. If Mr. Richardson purchases your store, he'll need someone to run it. Someone who knows the business, who understands what the townsfolk need." "Me." Sophia's heart began to race. "But I don't have the capital to." "You wouldn't need capital. You'd be employed by the ranch with a fair wage and a percentage of the profits." His blue eyes were earnest. "If you're interested, I could arrange a meeting with Mr. Richardson. He's a good man, fair in his dealings." Sophia's mind whirled with possibilities. "This is unexpected." "Life often is," Clay replied with a slight smile. "Think on it, no need to decide right away." They continued their walk, Clay pointing out changes in the town since she had last ventured out regularly. Near the livery stable, a group of children played with hoops, their laughter carrying on the breeze. "You miss having little ones around?" Sophia asked, then immediately regretted the question. "Forgive me, that was insensitive," but Clay didn't seem offended. "I do," he admitted. "Sarah loved horses, would have been 9 this year." He watched the children for a moment. "What about you and your husband? Did you plan for a family?" "We hoped," Sophia said softly. "It wasn't to be, though." Their conversation turned to lighter topics as they completed their circuit of the town center. When they reached Mrs. Holloway's again, Sophia found herself reluctant to end their time together. "Would you care to join me for dinner this evening?" Clay asked, seeming to share her sentiment. "I could tell you more about the double R, about Mr. Richardson's plans." "I would like that," Sophia replied, surprising herself with how much she meant it. That evening, over a simple but well-prepared meal at the hotel restaurant, Clay told her about the Double R Ranch, its vast grasslands, the herd of quality cattle, the bunkhouse where he had his own small room as a senior hand. "It sounds beautiful," Sophia said, imagining the open spaces and big sky. "It can be hard country," Clay acknowledged. "Winters are brutal and summer brings its own challenges, but there's a freedom to it that gets in your blood." "I've never been outside of town since we arrived," Sophia admitted. "Thomas was always too busy with the store, and it wouldn't have been proper for me to venture out alone." Clay studied her face for a moment. "Would you like to see it? The ranch, I mean." "I could bring a wagon tomorrow, take you out there to meet Mr. Richardson." The offer was tempting, but Sophia hesitated. "I'm still in mourning, Mr. Blackburn. People would talk." "Clay," he corrected once more, his voice gentle. "And yes, they likely would, but this is business, Sophia. A potential opportunity. Surely even the most proper folks couldn't object to that." She considered his words, weighing propriety against practicality. "Very well," she decided. "What time shall I be ready?" The next morning dawned clear and crisp. Sophia dressed carefully in her black morning dress, but allowed herself a touch of color with a blue ribbon at her throat, a small rebellion against the weight of constant grief. Mrs. Holloway packed them a modest lunch, her expression a mixture of concern and approval. Clay arrived promptly at 9 with a well-maintained wagon pulled by 2 sturdy horses. He helped Sophia up to the seat with strong, careful hands, the brief contact sending an unexpected warmth through her despite the morning chill. As they left Promise Creek behind, the landscape opened up before them, rolling hills carpeted in spring green, dotted with wildflowers and the occasional stand of cottonwoods. The vastness of it made Sophia's breath catch. "It's beautiful," she said, drinking in the open sky that seemed to stretch forever. "That it is," Clay agreed, though when she glanced over, she found him looking at her rather than the scenery. He quickly returned his attention to the road, a slight flush visible beneath his tan. The ride took nearly 2 hours, during which Sophia learned more about Clay's life before Montana, his childhood on a small farm in Ohio, his marriage to his childhood sweetheart Emma, the joy of Sarah's birth, and the devastating loss that had set him wandering. In turn, she shared stories of her own upbringing in Pennsylvania, her meeting Thomas at a church social, their dreams of building a life together in the West. Speaking of Thomas felt different, somehow still sad, but more like honoring a memory than drowning in fresh grief. "He sounds like he was a good man," Clay said when she finished a story about Thomas's kindness to a family passing through town. "He was," Sophia agreed quietly. "Not perfect, he could be stubborn, and sometimes his ambitions outpaced his caution, but he was good-hearted. He deserved a better end than he got." "Most do," Clay replied, his voice soft with understanding. The Double R Ranch came into view as they crested a hill, a sprawling collection of buildings nestled in a protected valley, with corrals, barns, and a handsome 2-story main house. Cattle grazed on the surrounding hillsides, and in the distance, riders moved among the herd. "Home," Clay said simply, a note of pride in his voice. As they approached the main house, a tall man with silver-streaked dark hair emerged onto the porch. He waved in greeting, his bearing that of someone accustomed to authority but without arrogance. "Mrs. King, may I present Robert Richardson, owner of the Double R," Clay said as he helped her down from the wagon. "Mrs. King, it's a pleasure to meet you," Richardson said, his handshake firm but not overpowering. "Clay speaks highly of your capabilities. Please, come inside where we can talk comfortably." The house was well appointed but unpretentious, with solid furniture and practical touches that spoke of a man who valued quality over show. A woman about Sophia's age greeted them in the sitting room, Eleanor Richardson, the rancher's daughter, who managed the household since her mother's passing years earlier, over coffee and fresh baked biscuits. Richardson outlined his proposition. The ranch needed a reliable source of supplies and a place to sell some of its products: leather goods, wool from the small flock of sheep they maintained, preserved foods prepared by the ranch cook. The store in Promise Creek would serve as an outpost, with Sophia managing day-to-day operations. "You'll have full authority over ordering and inventory," Richardson explained. "A monthly salary plus 5% of profits, and the rooms above the store would be yours, rent-free." It was more than Sophia had dared hope for, a chance to stay in the place she'd come to think of as home, doing work she understood with the security of regular income. "It's a generous offer, Mr. Richardson," she said carefully. "May I ask what prompted it?" Richardson glanced at Clay with a knowing look. Clay can be persuasive when he believes in something or someone. He made a compelling case for your knowledge of the business and standing in the community. The rancher leaned forward. "But I'm a businessman, Mrs. King. I wouldn't make this offer if I didn't think it sound." After further discussion of details, Eleanor offered to show Sophia the rest of the main house while the men discussed some ranch business. As they toured the well-ordered rooms, Eleanor spoke candidly. "Clay's different since he met you," she said, straightforward in the way of those raised far from city proprieties. "More like his old self, according to those who knew him before." Sophia felt herself flush. "We've only just met. He's been kind, nothing more." Eleanor's smile was knowing but not unkind. "Kindness is where the best things start, don't you think? My father met my mother when he helped her family after a flash flood. They were married 6 months later. She touched Sophia's arm gently. I'm not suggesting anything improper, Mrs. King. Just that good people recognize each other sometimes. After lunch, Clay offered to show Sophia the rest of the ranch. They walked together past the corrals where young horses were being trained, through the barn with its neat rows of tack and tools, and to a small rise that overlooked the entire operation. What do you think of Mr. Richardson's offer? Clay asked as they stood side by side, watching ranch hands in the distance moving cattle. It's more than fair, Sophia replied honestly, more than I could have hoped for. She turned to look at him directly. Did you arrange this for me? Clay met her gaze steadily. I mentioned the opportunity, yes, but Robert doesn't do anything that doesn't make good business sense. He believes in you because I do, but he'll expect results. Thank you, she said simply, the words inadequate for the hope he had helped restore. You're welcome, he replied, then hesitated before adding, I'll be honest, Sophia. I've found myself thinking about you more than might be proper, given your recent loss. I don't expect anything, and I would never press unwelcome attentions. But I wanted you to know that my interest in helping you isn't entirely selfless. The confession hung between them, honest and undemanding. Sophia found herself touched by his straightforwardness. I don't know what to say, she admitted. I'm still finding my way through grief. But I've enjoyed your company more than I thought possible a week ago. Clay nodded, accepting her words without pushing for more. That's enough for now, he said. Shall we head back? I promise to have you home before dark. The return journey felt shorter somehow, their conversation flowing easily. As Promise Creek came into view, painted golden by the setting sun, Sophia realized she felt lighter than she had in months. At Mrs. Holloway's door, Clay helped her down from the wagon, his hands lingering briefly at her waist. I'll speak to Sheriff Daniels about delaying the sale until Robert can make formal arrangements with the bank, he said. Would it be all right if I called on you again tomorrow? I'd like that, Sophia replied, finding she truly meant it. Over the next 3 weeks as spring deepened toward summer, a pattern emerged. Clay stayed in town, taking a room at the hotel rather than returning to the ranch. Each day, he would call on Sophia, sometimes accompanying her to meetings with the bank manager or helping her inventory what remained of the store's stock. Other times simply walking with her through town or sitting with her on Mrs. Holloway's front porch. People talked, of course. Some disapproved of a widow receiving male attention so soon after her husband's passing. Others, seeing the positive change in Sophia's demeanor and hearing of the arrangement with the double R, were more supportive. You can't please everyone, Mrs. Holloway advised one evening after Sophia mentioned an unkind remark overheard at the general store. But you can be true to yourself. That man looks at you like you hung the moon, and he's respected in these parts. Hold your head high. The store reopened under double R ownership on the 1st of June. Sophia moved back into the rooms above it, which Clay and some of the ranch hands had repaired and repainted. Business was slow at first, but steady townsfolk curious about the new arrangement, ranchers from surrounding areas drawn by fair prices and quality goods. Clay returned to his duties at the ranch but rode into town twice a week, ostensibly to deliver messages and supplies, but primarily, Sophia knew, to see her. Their feelings for each other deepened with each visit, though both maintained a careful propriety in public. It was during a violent summer storm in late July that everything changed. Rain lashed the windows of the store as Sophia completed the day's accounting. Lightning split the sky, followed by thunder that rattled the glass. Few customers had braved the weather, and she had closed early, settling in for a quiet evening alone. A pounding at the store's front door startled her. She hurried downstairs, lamp in hand, to find Clay on the threshold, drenched to the skin, his expression urgent. Clay. What on earth? The creek's flooding, he interrupted, water streaming from his hat. Sheriffs organizing an evacuation of the lower part of town. I came to make sure you were safe." Relief and affection flooded through her. "I'm fine here. The store sits high enough." "Thank God," he breathed, his shoulders sagging with relief. "I couldn't bear it if," he stopped himself, then continued more steadily, "May I come in? Just until the worst passes." Sophia stepped back, gesturing him inside. "Of course, you're soaked through. Let me find you something dry." Upstairs, she located an old shirt of Thomas's that she hadn't been able to bring herself to sell or give away. It would be too small across Clay's broader shoulders, but better than his sodden clothing. She also put water on to boil for coffee, grateful for the small stove that heated her quarters. When she returned to the store area, Clay had removed his dripping coat and hat but stood awkwardly, reluctant to drip on her clean floor. "Here," she said, handing him the shirt. "You can change behind the counter. I'll wait upstairs." When he joined her a few minutes later, the shirt indeed strained across his shoulders, but he looked marginally more comfortable. His hair curled damply at his neck, and Sophia felt a sudden, powerful urge to brush it back from his forehead. "Thank you," he said, accepting the steaming cup she offered. "Sorry to intrude on your evening." "Don't be ridiculous," she chided gently. "I'm glad you're here." They sat at her small table, listening to the storm rage outside. Clay told her about the rising creek, about helping families move to higher ground before riding to check on her. "You rode all that way in this weather?" she asked, touched by his concern. "I had to know you were safe," he said simply, his blue eyes steady on hers across the table. "Sophia," a tremendous crack of thunder interrupted him, and the lamp flickered ominously before steadying again. In that brief moment of near darkness, something shifted between them, a threshold crossed, though neither had moved. "What were you going to say?" Sophia asked softly when the rumbling faded. Clay set down his cup and reached across the table, his fingers hovering near hers without quite touching. "I was going to say that I love you," he said, his voice low but clear. "I know it's too soon, and I know you're still grieving. I don't expect anything in return, but I needed you to know." Sophia looked at his weathered face, at the earnest eyes that had been her anchor these past months, and realized with startling clarity that her heart had been healing without her fully noticing. "It's not too soon," she whispered, turning her hand to clasp his. "Not when it feels this right." The smile that broke across Clay's face was like sunrise after the longest night. He rose from his chair and came around the table, kneeling beside her. "I never thought I'd find this again," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "After Emma and Sarah, I thought that part of my life was over. But then I saw you that day, kneeling in the dust outside the church, and something in me recognized something in you." "Two broken hearts," Sophia murmured, raising a hand to cup his cheek. "Finding their way back to wholeness," he finished, turning his face to press a kiss to her palm. "I love you, Sophia King, and I promise you, if you'll let me, I'll spend every day trying to bring you peace and happiness." "I love you too," she said, the words freeing rather than frightening. "And I accept your promise, Clayton Blackburn, and make one in return to walk beside you in sunshine and in storm for all the days we're given." When he kissed her, it felt like coming home to a place she hadn't known she was seeking. They were married in September, when the hills turned golden and the first crisp hint of autumn touched the air. The ceremony was small but joyful, held in the same church outside which they had first met. Eleanor Richardson stood as Sophia's attendant, while Robert served as Clay's best man. Mr. Jenkins from the bank, who had once been prepared to sell Thomas's store out from under her, presented the couple with a silver tea service as a wedding gift. Sheriff Daniels and his wife gifted them with a hand-stitched quilt. Even those who had gossiped about their courtship seemed won over by the obvious happiness they found in each other. After the ceremony, they rode in a flower-decorated wagon to their new home, not the rooms above the store, which would now be used for storage, but a small house on the edge of town that Clay had been secretly building with help from the ranch hands. It was modest but sturdy, with wide windows to catch the morning light and a deep porch where they could sit together in the evenings. "Welcome home, Mrs. Blackburn," Clay said, lifting her into his arms to carry her across the threshold. "It's perfect," Sophia breathed, taking in the simple, beautiful space that represented their future together. That night, as they lay tangled together in the quiet darkness of their new bedroom, Sophia traced the lines of Clay's face with gentle fingers. "I used to wonder why God would take Thomas, why he would leave me alone," she whispered. "I don't believe he caused Thomas's death, but I do believe he sent you to me that day." Clay captured her hand and pressed a kiss to her fingers. "I believe that too. That even in our darkest moments, something good can be waiting to be found." "Promise me something," Sophia said, her voice soft in the darkness. "Anything," Clay replied without hesitation. "Promise me we won't waste a single day we're given together." "I promise," he vowed, gathering her closer. "Every day, every moment, I'll remind you how precious you are to me." Outside their window, the stars wheeled above Promise Creek, bearing silent witness to new beginnings forged from sorrow, to the resilience of hearts that dare to love again, and to the peace that comes from finding shelter in another's arms after the storm. By spring of the following year, the Double R trading post was thriving under Sophia's management, while Clay divided his time between ranch work and helping local farmers improve their livestock through selective breeding, a skill he had learned during his years of wandering. Their first child, a daughter they named Hope, was born the following winter, with Robert Richardson standing as godfather and Alina as godmother. 2 years later, a son they called Daniel joined their family. Life in the West remained challenging: drought years, harsh winters, the constant work of building and maintaining a community on the frontier. But in the home they made together, Clay and Sophia found the peace they had both once thought forever lost. And each year, on the anniversary of their first meeting, they would walk together to the spot outside the church where a widow once fell in the dust while praying, and a cowboy lifted her up with a promise that, against all odds, he had managed to keep.